We continue to fill out the Hornets grid. Nata helps us this time. Look, I told you we were diving into the hater picks last time, and Nata's going to help us do it a little bit more so today. Most annoying and worst starter, like some real hater picks today. It's coming up next. Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your pods, and that includes YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. As always, there's Doug Branson. You can find him on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 via Wes and Walker 92.7 FM. And there's Nata Edwards, a family member of the Locked On Hornets podcast. You can find him on Twitter at Nata the Scribe. He is the producer of the Eye On College Basketball podcast. Nata, how do you feel about being the guy we call to focus on most annoying and worst starter? And both of us felt like you were the guy to call. Is it still in your bio, recovering pessimist?
No, I took that out. A lot of people forgot who I was and what I do. So therefore, I had to remind them and put the entire full bio of everywhere I work because
Gotcha.
I'm that kind of jerk. So I think it kind of fits. Like, you're going to call probably who people think is the most annoying analyst of the Charlotte Hornets. So why not just call me? I'm going to be a jerk about this. So I feel like this is just one of those change ups down the middle of the plate, and I'm Aaron Judge, baby, taking in about 480.
This is absolutely a compliment on our parts, because everyone wanted to avoid some of these categories, but we knew that Nata Edwards was the man to take them head on.
He does not shy away from controversy one little bit. Let's bring up the Hornets grid. We brought up Rod Morrow. We brought David Walker. We are bringing on Nata. We are bringing our friends to help us out because we can't complete anything on our own. So we're outsourcing our work. And I actually think we're going to get the Hornets grid done. Notice everybody watching on YouTube. For those that aren't, I will explain it to you. Our last box that we had to fill was most wasted potential. We ended up with MKG, but it wasn't with any malice. We love MKG, and so Doug did the right thing. What did you put around MKG in the most wasted potential box?
Well, I said we needed to honor him, and so we needed to get one of those like funeral wreaths, beautiful flowers, what you do in remembrance, and so there he is. He is surrounded by a nice teal and purple arrangement. I put him in a Hornets uniform, found a picture of him in a Hornets uniform, not a Bobcats uniform. I thought that was respectful, even though he played a majority of his time as a Bobcat, I think, and was drafted as a Bobcat. And then I got a picture of him holding a basketball in his muscles. So I didn't,
it
as
wasn't
requested,
the elbow
I did not.
in.
Yeah, I did not find the picture of him with the janky elbow jump shot. I left that out. So there you go.
So before we lead off with the next two categories, another good reason you're on today is because you also like to handle MKG with care. And I think all of us handled this respectfully. I think you would have berated us had we not, but we did. Do you feel like we did him justice while also coming to the right decision on most wasted potential?
I don't have the way you guys handled that discussion was perfectly fair. I can't argue with the fact, if you want to say most wasted potential, good job. Yes, MKG absolutely fits there, considering where he was drafted, what he actually was, and that 7-game sample size in which he looked like he was going to be a top 25 guy at some point. There was that. I would just want to add a lot of his failures probably come down to the fact that the organization kind of cheaped out when it came to all of this. So when you have a guy like MKG that probably needed a lot more help with his jump shot, probably needed a little bit more help with his handle, and unfortunately he could not get there due to the organization, And also I would point out the one year he looked like his jump shot was coming together, the shooting coach went to go take a job over with the Charlotte 49ers.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of this where the infrastructure also kind of let MKG down. But again, the conversation, like I can't argue with the results. I cannot argue with what the conversations you guys had. Y'all were fair and respectful. And both of y'all know I would have left an angry voice note if y'all were anything but.
Thank you. I'm glad that we can pat ourselves on the back. All right, Doug, where do you want to go? You steer the ship. What box do you want to fill out today?
I got to start with most annoying. We brought on Nata, not because he is annoying, not because he's the most annoying, but because he is the most easily annoyed person that we know in the Charlotte Hornets talkosphere. So Nata,
very true.
Which Charlotte Hornet do you feel like, or Bobcat, belongs in the most annoying box?
So I have two names. Okay. The first name, probably like he got his just due for being probably the most annoying Charlotte NBA player. And I would say that's Tyrese Thomas. Like shout out.
Well, he certainly annoyed Paul Silas enough to maybe be choked out. In the locker room.
I like that answer. I do. I think Tyrese Thomas absolutely deserves to be a part of the conversation. Plus there's this, hey, it was annoying for the contract. He was annoying to Paul Silas. It was annoying because he was a top 5 pick, and then we were thinking maybe he comes here and figures things out in a bigger role, and none of it all did not happen. None of the positive stuff happened, so I like that answer.
All right. The other one, and I know there are going to be a lot more people that agree with this one, would be Boris Diaw. Now, granted, I have defended Boris Diaw on these airwaves every now and again because I always everyone wants a whole 2012 against him, and I say the team quit before he quit. But he feels like the Luther Vandross, and I like to bring this back to a joke that Cedric the Entertainer always said about Luther Vandross, and that curl just didn't quite curl. Like Boris Diaw was the player that he was good, but the curl just didn't kind of curl there. And so he never really put it together. So I figure him to be the most annoying while also owning that restaurant that I cannot remember the name of right now.
No, I can't either. Doug, you like those answers?
I think those are good names. I would. We always have the discussion about what does this mean? Most annoying to who? Like obviously, Tyrese was. I mean, you mentioned the contract for sure, but that was most annoying to Paul Silas. I don't know how annoying he was to the fan base. I'm trying to think. I mean, you could throw Derek Coleman into this conversation. I think from the original Hornets, because when I think of most annoying, I think of a player that either is good for stretches and then not good, or had the potential to be good. I mean, and also it's a fine line, right, between an annoying player and a one that makes you angry. Because I think that's where I wouldn't throw Nick Batum into this conversation, because I think he scooted on, and Lance Stephenson for sure. Both those players, I think, moved past annoying into an angry position. I honestly, I would make a case for Gordon Hayward here, because I mean he certainly enraged some, but just his inability to stay on the floor was pretty annoying.
Yeah, I will give you Gordon Hayward makes a lot of sense in this one, and Gordon Hayward the Gordon Hayward, if he stays healthy thing, is probably the biggest what if, especially in the first 2 years of that deal. I would also part of me thinks that Lance is too easy to answer though. And I guess that's the other thing when we start bringing up Lance Stephenson, when we start bringing up Nick Batum, and especially with everything that happened with his the mental issues that he experienced and losing his father and everything else like that. I kind of think Nick Batum is kind of out of bounds for most annoying. But when you say a guy like Gordon Hayward, I can't necessarily I can't argue that one.
No, I like Gordon. But with the Nick Batum thing, the reason I bring him away from this conversation is because the most successful team we've seen, he was a big part of that in 2015 and 16. The most successful second iteration of the franchise team. Nick Batum was a big part of that, and that's how he got the big contract. He might have become annoying, but monster part of a successful squad. I want to go back to Boris Diaw for a moment. Because, the dude obviously got overweight. He did quit on the team. Even if the Bobcats quit too, he certainly quit. But the most annoying thing I find about Boris Diaw is that he would then go to the Spurs and become a legitimate finals MVP candidate for the first 3 games of their series against the Heat. Like Boris Diaw, not only was he playing well or playing at all for a championship team after coming from the lowly Bobcats, he was playing damn well. He was a guy that would then go sip coffee with Greg Popovich, and then they would talk fine wines after just being rotund here with the Bobcats, not giving a damn. Like Boris Diaw, watching him against the Heat, dish, no-look passes, run their offense through him a little bit as a secondary passer and facilitator. Yeah, man, like Diaw hits me a little bit different, and it's why I like the answer so much.
Diaw's good. Let me make a final case for Gordon Hayward. Mm-hmm. When Gordon Hayward played, you saw that it was a different team. And it was the fact that he didn't play that made that fact so annoying to me. And then not only that, here's where I think he wins it for me, is that he explicitly says, I'm not a leader in the locker room. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's not going to play because he's injured all the time, and he's not a locker room presence. That, to me, is like, that gets him into that threshold of annoying to me. Because, like, what do you do?
Well,
what is it that you're here to do, Gordon?
I like dwindling it down to these two as well, because part of the other problem with Gordon was you could see how much he helped the squad when he was on the floor, allowing others to do their thing. But when you wanted your $30 million a year guy to be aggressive and finish, we didn't get that. We would get like these 7 field goal attempt games from him. We would see the lack of aggression, and people hated that from Gordon. So those are the two. I feel a little more twitchy when I think about Boris Diaw because it wasn't injury.
Everybody that was there at the time that was rooting for this team has a complete distrust of the French, which I feel bad for Tajon Salon just for this purpose.
It's so true.
Don't trust the French players here because of Boris Diaw and then later Nick Batum. But Boris Diaw set the mold, a fairly wide mold, but a mold nonetheless.
All right, let's make an official declaration on the other side of the break. Most annoying Charlotte Hornet horn cat of all time. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast. Not only will we officially answer most annoying Hornet of all time, but then we will go to the worst starter of all time, which I have a couple of names already at the top of my head. Stick around. We'll be back in just a moment. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Man, we got NFL action tomorrow night. I'm excited as hell. Chiefs, Ravens, Panthers first game against the Saints to open up the season, and I feel like the first 3 games are winnable. I'm knocking on wood, though. You can hear it through the mic. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game, which is also nice for you guys that are fans of teams outside of the Panthers. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime you want to. No risk at all. Just visit FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com. Download America's #1 sportsbook. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Boris Diaw, Gordon Hayward, those are the leaders in the clubhouse. I don't know about any other honorable mentions, and not at the top of my head. Like we've talked a lot. Like, there's some overlap here with most wasted potential, which is in itself annoying because you see the potential and they don't realize it, and you want it so bad for your team. So perhaps some of the names we talked about, like Book Knight. You're going to bring up Malik Monk, Doug. I don't want that to happen, but I'm just going to get out in front of it before you bring his name.
We can't do that. I can think of another lottery pick, by the way, that we could throw out here.
Who is it?
Sean May.
Yeah. For North Carolina fans, we wanted it to happen so bad. Nata, this is your world.
It's not just the Sean May. Like, remember who he was drafted over. Remember that portion of that. He was drafted over Danny Granger.
Oh, okay, yeah. To be fair, though, like people were praising the Pacers, right, for drafting the guy not at a Power 5 school, and so I don't know, but you're right. It would have certainly helped had they drafted Danny Granger. Who's your choice, Nata? I feel Doug, you would go Gordon, right?
I made the best case I could for Gordon Hayward.
All right. Yeah, I'm good with either one. Nata, you be the tiebreak.
I kind of have to go Boris because I think there's going to be another square for Gordon Hayward at some point in this board. So I'm going to we got to spread it around, and in that case, let's do Boris Diaw for that one.
Just for the record, Reddit is doing this as well, and they selected Lance Stephenson.
Not a bad choice. It's not bad.
Lance was more disappointing and infuriating.
It was sad and angry.
Yeah.
It was sangry.
Yeah.
People, the thing that people have to understand is that man changed his jump shot format in practice, his release in practice, I want to say about 10, 11, 12 times, and infuriated the coaching staff, the media staff, infuriated basically everybody. He could not come back. That's how bad it got with Lance Stephenson.
Yeah, it got bad. All right, Lance is fine. Boris is our answer. Gordon, Doug made a strong push. I was fine with it, but Boris Diaw, most annoying. Let's move on to worst starter. Hey, this is a dark episode. We're going through dark times. Worst starter of all time. Doug, we'll start with you here. Since you lost out on Gordon Hayward, you get the floor first after being, was it captain of a debate team that went all the way to the final but didn't deliver on the final stage?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we were the 2017 Patriots. Yeah, we lost the championship. It's okay, but I'm not bitter about it. So I'll tell you that Reddit had Desanya Diop as their selection here. And look, with all due respect to Reddit, I think you could go through some of those Bobcats years and just pick any fourth or fifth starter. There's going to be, I could dig up some names while you guys are discussing some of the other ones. But when I think of worst starter, I don't think of the player that was the worst who happened to start. Because again, I think you could do that on Locked On Celtics or Locked On Mavericks or Locked On Lakers. That would be a fun discussion. But there's just too many Diops hanging around to make that a very fun discussion. So I think worst starter. I think a player that, most impacted the starting lineup with his poor play. And I think it's a guy we've talked about a lot and who's been in the running for a lot of these boxes. And it's Lance Stephenson. He just as a starter, just devastated the Hornets' ability to continue the success that they had. So or start the success earlier than they ended up starting it, and set off here's my case. Here's my debate case for Lance Stephenson. It's not just about the poor play, the bad shooting, the turnovers, the not really impacting the defensive end of the floor like we thought he was going to impact it. It's not even all of that. It's the fact that them missing so badly on Lance Stephenson set off a chain of events that ended up with the Hornets somehow ending up with Miles Plumlee, who gave them absolutely nothing. It ended up with Dwight Howard being on this team. It ended up with Bismack Biyombo making his second return to the Hornets. There were just so many cascading effects that devastated this franchise's ability to compete for many, many years. We are no longer living with those chain of events, thankfully. But yeah, I have to give it to Lance Stephenson here. I'm going to pull up his stats as a starter to hopefully help my case.
No, there are.
It makes sense.
You can't be wrong. I think part of this, I have a couple of names. I'll go to you first, Nata, but it can't just be that you're bad and you start. You have to actively hurt the team, right? You can't just be camping out in the corner and putting up Tony Snell 0-0-0-0 numbers, right? That would actually be okay. At least you're not doing anything to help, but you're not actively hurting. If you're a starter, you're getting big time minutes. The coach feels obligated to pay you to some degree because of all the money. Lance Stephenson checks all those boxes, so I don't mind that answer whatsoever. Nata, are there any other names that you can think of?
If we are going to use Doug's criteria, and I think Doug's criteria is a good one. I like the guy. I think he's a great guy. Gerald Henderson might belong on this list.
Oh no, Gerald! I did not expect Gerald. Okay, make your case.
I would say most average starter. I would give him a most average starter. I would give him worst starter.
All right, what's your case?
Well, again, for being the position that he was in, and because he was promised to be, and he might have fit in, and had I thought about it more, he might have fit more for most annoying, because he was always tantalizing you with taking that next step, and then fell in love with the turnaround jump shot at the Buzz City logo. Fun inside joke for those that know.
No, you're right. He was a mid-range guy.
He just never, like, when we talk about those Bobcat years, like, you could point out that he might have been the best player on a 7-win team, which kind of indicates kind of what he was. The other guy that I would throw out there, and this is an interesting name, and the more I thought about it, the more it kind of works for me. Kwame Brown. Kwame Brown, like when you start talking about disappointing careers, guys that didn't necessarily help you out, that basically actively hurt you. Kwame Brown started, I want to say, almost 30 games in that last season before he turned around and blew the whole thing up. Like, I think when you start talking about that pre-2012 season, Kwame Brown fits a lot of the categories for worst starter.
Okay. Gerald Henderson, Kwame Brown. I think Lance is still the leader. I'm going to give you two names. I think Lance certainly is going to beat one. We'll see about the other guy. So not enough sample of starts for him, but Dwayne Bacon was the worst offensive player in the league when he started at the beginning of his season a few years ago.
It's a pretty good one.
I mean,
that's a good one.
And we all wanted it for him. My favorite thing about Dwayne Bacon was he was the guy that popularized, it doesn't matter if you go to G League, just go down and hoop. And that became a thing. Devontae Graham was following that as well. Like, hey, it's not a punishment. I view this as helping me. So it was cool. Dwayne just wanted to hoop, man. And God, he was actively hurting the team as a starter for the first 10, 15 games. I wanted it bad for Dwayne, but it wasn't there. So remember, he started his first ever game as a second-round pick, by the way, because Batum was hurt. So that was one. My other one, much more of a sample size here.
Uh-oh.
We're going back to the 2015-16 season, the same year that they actually get to the playoffs and have the 7-game series against the Heat. PJ Hairston started 43 of 48 games before he was traded. In that season, he shot under 36% from the field. He shot 31% from three. Got traded mid-season after starting over half the games, technically, for Courtney Lee. And the team goes on a second-half run and has the most successful stint ever in the second iteration of the franchise. Yeah. PJ Hairston, but like an addition by addition and by subtraction, it's a wild thing that he started more than half the games for a playoff team. But it happened, and as soon as they traded him, playoffs.
Yeah, and PSA to any Hornets fans, if you do get a request to talk to PJ Hairston about memorabilia, please deny that request. Do not accept. Just Google it. Those are great candidates. And the stats, I've been looking up these Lance Stephenson stats as a starter, which we should mention, only started 25 games of 61 because he was
surprising
because he was benched.
Yes, he was. But the problem is the numbers, just the raw numbers. I mean, he shot as a starter at 38.6% from the field on 11 shots. It's bad. It's not atrocious. The 3-point shooting is atrocious. Yeah. It was 15% as a starter. Did go up to 19% off the bench, but only on 2 shots. He wasn't a volume 3-point shooter. Did almost average 7 rebounds as a starter and almost 5 assists. Did have 2+ turnovers as a starter, and I remember the turnovers in particular. Just the bad basketball IQ that was just stunning from a player that was so impactful for Indiana just a season before. And so he was a minus 5.1. So again, bad numbers, pedestrian, but you really had to watch it. You had to remember how much of the flow that he took away from the game when the ball was in his hands. And then again, my case, because I think you could make a strong case for PJ Hairston. You could make a strong case for Dwayne Bacon just on numbers alone. But my case for Lance as worst starter is that, again, this cascading effect that happened because they made him a starter, then had to bench him, and then couldn't do anything with him. And then, the contract, it's just all kind of goes into the pot.
Okay, so let's stop there again. Let's come to an official declaration on the other side. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast. We gave you our nominees. We will come back with an official answer on the worst starter in Charlotte Hornets history. The final segment of Locked On Hornets coming up next. I'll be honest, I would not have expected that PJ started almost double the games that Lance did. Like I would have expected Lance to have started more games
for the same coach, by the way.
Yeah, that's right. I would have expected that, but it goes to show, right? Like Lance was so bad that he got benched. PJ was so bad, was only there because they didn't have another shooting guard they felt comfortable with, so they just kept trotting him out there on the court. Played 20 minutes a game, so it's not like starters minutes, but still plenty to do some damage, and he did. So like,
well, but PJ, but to explain this, like PJ wasn't asked to shoulder really any responsibility for those lineups. There was a lot of just PJ sort of doing cross country, just track meet, running back and forth. Whereas Lance was particularly terrible because they needed him to do a lot of things.
Yes, also
and he
true.
couldn't do any of them.
I think that's a good point. Like you're part of it with Lance is the feeling. You had to be there. with PJ, there's almost the salvaging of and the sacrifice. Like PJ was the sacrifice to help us get to a 7-game series against Miami. So I'm again, it's up to you, Nata. You're the tie break. If there's somebody else you want to bring in, that's fine. But it feels like this is a PJ Hairston / Lance Stephenson debate.
Honestly, Doug's argument and me just remembering the black cloud that was Lance Stephenson over that franchise for that year, like I kind of have to give it to Lance at this point. Like,
I think it's fine. I think it's totally fair.
PJ comes close though. PJ is a very, very, very close second. But yes, I think Lance is it.
I like your responsibility. Not even like the responsibility argument hits different to me, and even the train that it set off, right, with all the bad trades that are happening. But when it's like, oh man, we thought this guy was going to be a plus contributor, and it's not going well. We've had a lot of Lance Stephenson for the hater picks here in the last 2 episodes.
Well, because there have been, I said this on the last episode with David, when you go 10 plus years without being in the playoffs and then 22 years without a playoff series win, you don't do that by accident. There are a lot of both things you do on purpose, but also you've had some pretty horrible luck as well. But Lance Stephenson stands out because it was so unbelievable to watch your team invest that much money into a player and believe because the evidence was there that he could, translate that, and it didn't. And not only that, it went sour so quickly, and he wasn't really marketable at all. And yeah, it was. It was horrible. It was horrible.
You want to come back tomorrow, Nata, for another episode on Lance Stephenson? You want?
No. Well. Maybe. Hold on. I was going to point this out though. It's very, very funny that you could make the case that Charlotte NBA franchise had their best free agent acquisition the year before, and quite possibly the worst free agent acquisition in back-to-back years. Mm-hmm. Think about like because again, Big Al. Easily, like there's no argument. He is the greatest free agent acquisition in Charlotte NBA history.
Yeah,
Lance is easily the worst in back-to-back years.
And they got Lance Stephenson because they missed out on Gordon Hayward.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
and that was I guess that was the first year of the Hornets.
Yes,
So you bring in Lance to bring back the buzz. You're bringing back the name that we all cared about so much. And here's Lance throwing up Carlton-esque shots, airballing from half court. Mm-hmm. It was tough to stomach. The first year, it's like, yeah, Hornets are back. Oh, God, please don't shoot. Please don't start. Please don't do anything.
Yeah.
I have the grid back up here. So we've done worst starter, most annoying. The ones that we have left, and I just want to have you just rapid fire, Nata, any opinions you have that can help us, aid us in future discussions. We've got most underrated, most overrated, which honestly, I think we just need to have you back because we're always good for a little underrated, overrated game. So I think we just have you back for that one. But then best perimeter defender, best rim defender, most athletic, and then best in post. which I think we've settled on Big Al.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Like, there's a couple of these that are like absolutely locked up already. Like,
Yeah.
let's be real here. Best perimeter defenders is Crash. Like, we can just end that now. We can end that one now. The only other guy that might come close is MKG. Best rim defender is obviously Zoe. Best in post, obviously Al. The one controversial thing that I know people are going to want to get mad at me for, I don't think you can put Nick Batum or Gordon Hayward in the most overrated category. And if I was going to have a selection in that, I might throw Kelly Oubre in most overrated.
Oh, no. Tsunami father.
Yes.
You're back to Tsunami Poppy.
Well, yeah, because most overrated would be a player that I think that the way I would define that is that so many of these things come down to definitional arguments. But like the way I would define that is a player that a lot of people think was really good for the Hornets who really wasn't.
Right. Yeah.
Which is Kelly Oubre's tenure as a Charlotte Hornet in one sentence.
Which, by the way, like, yes, it is bad. We are not saying this as a compliment to Kelly, but we also had great feelings with Kelly. When he would go for 8 3-pointers in the fourth quarter, that was fun. Like, we're simply calling it as it is. How much did Kelly help the Hornets win on a consistent basis? Not a whole lot. But there were times, especially in the second half, and then he was getting involved in other things like, kind of passing, like barely, but we
defending. No one overrated. We had fun with Tsunami Poppy in a time in which there wasn't a lot of fun to be had. We glommed onto players with any kind of personality or entertainment factor, but none of us were coming on here and saying like, "Ooh, this is an essential piece." In fact, we were on this program saying definitively like they are not going to move forward with Kelly Oubre, and that's probably the right decision. I think, look, two playoff appearances. You don't get into the second round. I mean, I think, Kemba Walker, you might make a case here, most overrated.
Whoa. Don't you do it.
Sir.
That is.
I mean, come on. I mean, where's the playoff series win? I mean, show me the record.
You like to see
the Gots is strong in you right there on that one, Doug. The Gots is strong.
It's all about the postseason. We haven't been there 22 years.
That's a problem. It's fun. I don't want to burn all the answers for perimeter defender and rim defender, but I think I agree.
There's 3 of these that are locks.
Yeah,
we're not arguing about this.
I'd like to throw a couple of honorable mentions just to give them credit, but ultimately they wouldn't take the award. But you're right. I'm with you.
Most athletic is probably the most interesting because there are so many different answers.
It is tough. Yeah, you got names, but it's going to be tough to figure out.
Because here's the question I have for that specific one. How do you not say Jay Rich?
At that time, maybe not. Little old, like young Jay Rich, yes, but
young
old
Jay Rich, yeah, but he was older, but he got up. He still got
did.
up.
It's like Kai Jones, honestly, could be in there. Yeah,
Kai, Crash at that point, like younger Crash.
Crash was sweet. No doubt.
Like you have a whole lot of options for most athletic. And
I mean, LJ, you got to throw LJ in there just for body type.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, big, strong, ran fast, jumped high.
Exactly.
Oh, Baron Davis. Yeah. Oh man,
it's tough.
That's the toughest one. That's the toughest one for me. That's the toughest one.
All right. Who's our most athletic friend? We got to call him up next. / her. Who is it? I have no clue.
I have no idea.
Sam Perley. Calling up Sam.
Oh no! Now it sounds like we're insulting him. No,
I'm not.
It's Sam Perley.
I am the biggest offenders. I believe Sam is the most athletic.
All right, we'll call Sam up. We'll ask Sam who the most athletic is in Charlotte Hornets history. That'll do it. Thanks to Nata helping us out. Hopefully we didn't annoy him. I know he's easily annoyed, but I hope we did not annoy him here on the Locked On Hornets podcast. Follow this man on Twitter at Nata the Scribe, and also college basketball season. It's just around the corner. You're going to want to pay attention.
Remind me.
I know, but you do such great work, so that's why they got you. You're a producer of the Eye On College Basketball podcast with Gary Parrish and Matt Norlander. It is and I'm not saying this lightly, it is the national college basketball podcast you need to check out over all the other ones. That's Doug Branson. Check out his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com, and I'm not saying this lightly. It is the best Hornets Substack in the Hornets community. So go read his content there.
And I'm not saying this lightly. Sam Purley dunked on me one time.
Got to hear that story.
Oh, wow.
Can't wait to hear that story. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3. You can also see a video of me being athletic myself, throwing a couple dimes, emulating Jake Delhomme for some crucial Panthers moments in franchise history. You can go check that video out there on Twitter as well if you want to, and then maybe I'll just be the one that decides most athletic. That'll do it. Thanks for making us your first listen. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day.